So, Philippines, you've elected Ferdinand Marcos II, Bong Bong, as your president. So, let's learn something today about the president elect. On June 27th, 1990, a special tax audit team of the Bureau of Internal Revenue, BIR, investigated the tax liabilities and obligations of the late Ferdinand Marcos Sr., who died on September 29, 1989. The investigation disclosed in a 1991 memorandum that the Marcos family had failed to file estate tax returns and several income tax returns covering the years of 1982 to 1986 in violation of the National Internal Revenue Code. Sounds like a great family to me. Not. BIR also issued a deficiency estate tax assessment against the estate of the late Ferdinand Marcos Sr. in 1991 for unpaid estate taxes from 1982 to 1985 and 1985 to 1986, totaling in Philippine pesos 23,293,607,683. With inflation in 2022 in Philippine pesos, that is 97,792,696,739. So we're not talking about how maybe the Marcos regime, the first Marcos, the dictator, came into so much wealth. And this silly story that some of you Filipinos believe, that he was a good lawyer and so one of his clients paid him in gold bars. Right. Some of you really believe that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the BIR, a government entity, telling Marcos Jr., the estate of Marcos Sr. in 1991, that he owes the government, in today's money, almost 100 billion pesos. Me and most people out there can't even imagine having that much money. And Marcos, the man you've elected to be your president starting on June 30th, owes that much money to the government legitimately, because they just said F you. They just gave the middle finger to their own government and didn't file by not filing the state tax and income tax returns. Okay, well, it goes on. Formal assessment notices were served to Bong Bong Marcos at his office on October 20th, 1992. And he was then the representative of the 2nd District of Ilocos Norte. Several notices of levy were also issued by the BIR on February 22nd, 1993 to May 26, 1993, to satisfy the deficiency of estate tax returns, to no avail. This guy you've elected president is a scumbag. He is told that he owes money, taxes, to the government, and he just ignores. One question that comes to my mind as an American is, I know that not paying your taxes, committing tax fraud, can land you in jail for years, prison, in the United States of America. The IRS has power. Uh, it has teeth. There are laws. There's jail time. But apparently here, you can just ignore the BIR, the Philippines equivalent of the IRS, and nothing will happen to you. You just go on living your life. You owe them millions, billions of pesos. Oh well. Yeah, they give you a piece of paper that says, please pay us. And then you just take that and chuck it in the trash because nothing is going to happen to you. Hmm. Well, this sounds like the kind of guy I want to be. I want to have as president. Not. So then in 1993, a lawyer filed some creatory, whatever. But then in 1995, Quezon City Regional Trial Court Judge Benedicto Ulep convicted Marcos and sentenced him to 7 years in jail for tax evasion. Okay. Well, so apparently you can go to jail for tax evasion, tax fraud in this country. Tax evasion and his failure to file an income tax return from the period of 1982 to 1985 while sitting as the vice governor of Ilocos Norte from 80 to 83 and as governor of Ilocos Norte from 83 to 86. Marcos subsequently appealed the decision to the Court of Appeals over his conviction. However, in 1994, the Court of Appeals ruled that the estate tax deficiency assessment had become final and unappealable, allowing it to be enforced. So, what does all that really say? It says that you have taken the brilliant decision, and I say that facetiously. You have taken the foolish decision, people of the Philippines, the majority of you, not those of you who voted for Robredo or Pacquiao and the other candidates, Francisco Moreno. Those of you who voted for Bong Bong Marcos, you're fools. You have elected a man who was convicted of tax evasion, sentenced to 7 years in jail, appealed, somehow stayed out of jail while appealing. That doesn't happen in the United States. Once you're convicted, you go to jail, and you can do your appeals from jail, but you start serving your sentence. But he apparently in the Philippines, you can just continue to lead your life outside of jail, even though you were convicted and sentenced. So good job, Filipinos, the majority of you, for electing a convicted criminal, a man who was sentenced to 7 years, appealed, and the appeal was upheld. On October 31st, 1997, the Court of Appeals affirmed its earlier decision, with Marcos being convicted for the failure of the filing of an income tax return under Section 45 of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1977, while being acquitted of tax evasion under the charge of violating Section 50 of the same statute. So he just continues living his life outside of jail as a convicted criminal, and eventually convinces a court of appeals several years after his initial conviction to overturn the one of the convictions. One is upheld and one is overturned. In spite of the removal of the penalty of imprisonment, Marcos was ordered the payment of back income taxes to the Bureau of Internal Revenue So he doesn't have to serve his prison sentence. Wow, lucky him. I mean, when were they ever going to enforce it? Just appeal after appeal. Years go by. Okay, well, I live here in the Philippines, so I'll just have to remember that. If I'm ever convicted of a crime, I'll just appeal. And those appeals will drag on for years. And I'll just keep living my life outside of prison. Okay, that's how it works here. All right. With interest and the issuance of corresponding fines of 2,000 pesos per count of non-filing of income tax returns from 1982 to 1984 and 30,000 pesos for 1985, plus the accrued interest. Marcos later filed a petition for certiorari to the Supreme Court of the Philippines over the modified conviction imposed by the Court of Appeals, but subsequently withdrew his petition in August 2001, thereby declaring the ruling as final and executory. Well, what do you think Bong Bong did? You think he paid? I think not. In 2021, the Quezon City Regional Trial Court certified that there were no records on file of Marcos settling the corresponding tax dues and fines. So, it goes on. The BIR has issued renewed written demands on the Marcos family to pay the estate tax liabilities, which has remained unpaid. As a result, the estate tax deficiency assessment with penalties is estimated to have ballooned to 203 billion 819 million 66,829 Philippine pesos as of last year, as of 2021. The unpaid estate tax return was used as grounds in one petition to cancel Marcos's certificate of candidacy for president in the 2022 elections. And you damn well should have canceled his candidacy for president, his certificate of candidacy. You should have elected Francisco Moreno, Isko, who as president would have used his powers to force the Marcos family to pay. I don't understand how they can just say no to the government. And now he's going to be president and he's going to have presidential powers. And he will definitely use these powers to protect himself and the other heirs of Ferdinand Marcos Sr. from ever having to pay the 203 billion pesos that he and the other Marcos family members owe to the government. What have you done to yourselves, Philippines? Why have you elected this dirtbag? He doesn't care about you. He pretended to during the campaign, sure. But in the end, he's only out for himself. That much is clear based on his behavior throughout his life. I feel sorry for you, Philippines, that you have such a man as president now, or you will in a few weeks.